Hello everyone, welcome along to this Cumbria Future Leaders video. Today I'm joined with Sharon and we're going to be talking a little bit about networking. So Sharon, tell me a little bit about yourself, sort of what your role is, where you work.
My name's Sharon Brooke. I'm head of sales at the North Lakes Hotel and Spa at Penrith. North Lakes is part of a large group that has a ton of weights. And basically my responsibility is to keep the level of inquiries coming through to the hotel. And that's basically, that's my main focus, is keeping those phones ringing and the people coming through the door.
Well, I can imagine that's been a little bit of a challenge over the last 18 months.
It has, and still ongoing, I think.
Of course, yeah. So obviously we're talking about networking today, so I'm just interested to know what networking means to you.
Well, because of what I have to do and my role, as I said, if you wanted to put a one-liner on it, it's to keep those level of inquiries coming through. Networking is absolutely crucial. I couldn't do my job without networking. Getting people to come through the door, people to pick up the phone is very much about relationship building, and that's what networking is all about. It's all about building those relationships.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe a common misconception that you're expecting networking equals sales, but it's that relationship building to start with. It's not necessarily all about building your sales immediately from networking.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people make a mistake.
Yeah.
And I have worked for companies that haven't realised that, they haven't fully understood why you go networking, and they think that you go to a network and you automatically will come back with a list of orders. And that's not how it works, to be honest. The idea is that if you continue networking, then when somebody has a requirement, or they know somebody that has a requirement, they'll go, oh, you need to speak to Sharon. She can do this for you. So you use networking basically to help people sell for you. So you're not necessarily selling to the people you're talking to at the network. It's them talking about you to other people. And people buy from people that they like. So it's really important that you build up that great relationship and rapport. And it's very repetitive in a way. But to be honest, a lot of my network contacts have become really, really good friends. And that is the aim of it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. My next question you have covered is, how does it help in your current role? So we've already said it's all about relationship building, that they can refer you to other people. But is there anything else you'd like to add on that one, or have you covered that?
No, really. Yeah, I mean, if I didn't have it, it would make my job a lot harder. I mean, I think if you ask anybody in business, making cold calls is a horrendous thing to have to do.
It is.
And the thing is, social media has made that so much easier. Previously, before social media, you'd be phoning up and trying to get through the gatekeeper, the receptionist, who would never want to put you through because her or his instructions were not to put anybody through. And you always try to get to the person at the top, and it's impossible. Social media has made that so much easier, especially LinkedIn, because now if you are looking to target a particular company, you can actually network online.
Yeah.
And that has become even more powerful now with the COVID situation, because you couldn't go out networking. So what you do find is, especially during the furlough period, it was very important to keep in touch with if you were working at home or whatever, and you were talking to people about what they were watching on Netflix, and how were you coping with the kids and things. And you were calling people by the first name instead of Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. or whatever, which you felt you needed to do because you were talking to a chairman or a CEO. Now, all of a sudden, his name was Bob or Brenda or whatever. And it was so much easier.
And you saw inside their kitchens.
And
broken down some barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'd find that suddenly halfway through, one of the kids had come in and asked an embarrassing question, or the cat had jumped onto the keyboard.
That happens regularly in my house.
Yeah. So now all of a sudden, Mr. and Mrs. is now Bob and Brenda, sort of thing. So it's made it so much easier, really, to make those contacts.
Yeah. Obviously, Cumbria Future Leaders, we work with young people and with support and guidance for 16 to 25-year-olds. Obviously, the 16 to 25-year-old bracket might just be starting out with networking. How would it be useful for those young people to network, and why might it be of use to them?
Well, as I say, it's all about building relationships and contacts. At the end of the day, it depends on what you're looking to get out of it. And that's the important thing with networking. The first thing you need to do is, what do I want to achieve from it? And that will help you then decide what's the best way of doing it. But networking is so important to help with your development and your career progression, because it's at these places that people find out about you, and they find out about the person you are. You know, it's not, these days, it's not always about how intelligent you are, or what, you know, how much you know this and your academic qualifications. It's very much about the person you are. And for example, in hospitality, there is a position for everybody in hospitality. There's so many different areas that you can go into. And I find that, you know, I'll get a CV. We're recruiting at the moment, as most people in hospitality are. We get CVs through. And yes, we look at the CV and we want to make sure that it's spelled right, whatever. But it's very important to have a network of people that you can go to and say, do you know what, I'm recruiting at the moment. And they'll go, oh, I know a great person for you. She'd be amazing, or he'd be fantastic. And that's even better because you're getting a recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you'll find that a lot of people in business will tell you as they're going through their career that they actually get headhunted. And the term is used because somebody's gone, do you know what, I know somebody who fit that perfectly. And they go, right, we want that person. And they approach you, you don't, you know. And that's how very much it does work.
It does. I totally agree. And so you've talked about hospitality. My background is hospitality. And I think for anybody starting out in their career, maybe 16, 17, maybe still in college, having a role within the hospitality industry will massively help. It'll just help you build up those communication skills, speaking to people that you don't know, speaking to strangers, and building up those relationships and knowing how to talk to people is a great start. And definitely, even if it's just a part-time role, that will help you. And maybe just subconsciously, you won't even realize you're doing it, but you are starting to build up your networks and your relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And it builds up your confidence. It's all about building up that confidence. And we have, you know, we've had some new employees, and they started at the very, very bottom, and they've worked their way up, and you've seen their confidence building and their knowledge building. And you know, it's like the ugly duckling suddenly becoming this swan. You know, it's just amazing. How they do develop. To be honest,
in school I was so shy, couldn't say boo to a goose, and would just sit quietly studying, and then getting these roles in hospitality and working my way up through different roles, my confidence just increased to be able to sit here and do what I do now as for a living. Obviously, I would attribute that to working in hospitality and working my way up through those roles that you don't even realise are so beneficial to you.
Absolutely, and a lot of people don't realise that hospitality is a career. They think it's just something that they go to university or a little bar job. But I mean, the last two GMs that we've had here at North Lakes, I don't think they intended on staying, to be fair, you know, and starting the bar or whatever, and they've worked their way up, and
I can't express how much I loved working in hospitality, and there is that progression out there.
Huge.
So definitely worth exploring as a career. Back to networking then. We went on a little tangent there.
I always do.
I do as well. Obviously, networking, especially if you're just starting out with networking, it can be a little bit of a challenge. What would you identify as the hardest thing about networking?
I think it's that whole going into a room with a bunch of people that you don't know and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to say something or do something and they're going to judge me for it. Everybody starts in networking absolutely terrified, to be honest, the very first time you have to do that. But there's certain things that you can do to sort of make that easier. I mean, I would always suggest that somebody who's new to networking, I mean, again, carefully select where you're going. Choose the network wisely. Make sure that the person who's organising the network knows that you're new. If you can go with somebody that you know, great, they can teach you the ropes. I always say try and find somebody who's experienced. And if you can't find somebody, then get the organiser to find somebody for you and buddy up. You know, that's the best way of doing it. And then what you can do is, I mean, you might find that you start that network together, And then by the time you've done 40 minutes or something, suddenly you've gone off and thought, do you know what, this isn't actually as difficult, because that all it is talking to people. Yeah. And the easiest way, people love to talk about themselves. So all you've got to ask is, tell me about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're not wanting to just know about business. I mean, you want to know about what they do, but you want to also know about them as a person. Because as I say, that's where the relationship building. If you just go and ask somebody, you know, tell me about the widgets that you make or something, you know, it soon becomes mind-boggling. But if you start asking them about, oh, you know, have you managed to? Certainly COVID has been a huge positive in the sense of it's been a conversation starter, hasn't it? How have you coped? How have you done this? Going back to the LinkedIn. What have you been watching on Netflix? Oh gosh, are you homeschooling? How have you managed that? You know, and all of a sudden people they love to talk about themselves, and they love to talk about their family and what they enjoy to do. And immediately then you're finding the next question that's coming. And if, to be honest, networking is really easy in a way, because you want them to do all the talking and you just listen. You've got to listen.
And take in what they're saying.
And body language is so important, because you need to watch what they're doing and seeing if they're engaged. And you know people are engaged if they're giving you eye contact, but if they're looking all over the place, or they're looking at the watch, or that you haven't got
their some demonstrations here.
Yeah, you know, like them. Yeah. You know you haven't got their attention. But equally the same with you. If you're trying to talk to me and asking me questions, and I'm looking all over the place as well, then you're thinking, God,
you've got to show you're interested in the person.
Absolutely.
You might actually find, oh, actually, this person's probably not got an awful lot in common, but out of courtesy, you've got to carry that conversation through and stick it to the end, because you, at the end of the day, you don't know who they know.
Yeah.
And if you're coming off making a bad impression on someone by showing you're not interested, even if you don't think that they're the right person for you to build a relationship with, don't forget about who they know.
Exactly. You never know. I mean, again, going back to hospitality, it's great because everybody needs a hotel at some point, whether it's a meeting, accommodation, leisure stay, or whatever. And, you know, I'll be honest, I very rarely go to a network where I don't get something out of it in the end, in the long run, because somebody, you know, will say, oh, do you know what, I want to arrange a spa break, or yeah, I do need a meeting, or whatever. But that takes years of going and attending, and sometimes you don't want to go, you know, it's there might be one at 6 o'clock at night, and you think, oh, really, I just want to go home, had a long day. But it's amazing you get there, and once you get there, you know, it's amazing how it picks you up.
Absolutely. Just that social interaction. And I think the last 18 months has diminished that a little bit. And obviously a lot of networking has had to go online. So I don't know if you've got any experience of virtual networking, obviously, aside from LinkedIn.
I have. Again, the big thing is when you start networking, you need to find what works for you. And I have to be honest, I did find the online challenging, because very often some don't put you in a virtual room to chat. You don't have a choice necessarily who you're going in that room with. So it's not as good as face-to-face networking for me. It may be different for other people. I can only talk about my own experience, but I prefer to be in a room with somebody because you can react a lot faster and get people's attention more. And people aren't sidetracked as much. As I say, when you're at home, you know, suddenly they'll turn their camera off or whatever because something's happened, or they're trying to email. Yeah. So do you know what I mean? Whereas when you're actually in the room, you know that you've got their attention a lot.
Absolutely. And more. You've talked about body language, but over sort of a virtual room, delays in internet, you're not quite sure if you're going to be talking over somebody. You don't get those cues to know when somebody's going to be talking in that interaction. So it can be quite stilted conversation. Whereas obviously face to face, we have that interaction. But as you said, it's depending on what your personal preferences are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So absolutely give it a go. It might be for you. If you're sort of lacking confidence, it might be a great way to start. So you don't have that initial worry about walking into a room, because actually someone's putting you in a room with somebody at the same time. And I do think obviously a lot of people will be in the same boat, so try and keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, and the big thing is always ask for help.
Yeah,
you know, if you want to try something, as I say, get yourself a buddy, ask for help, get some tips, even go online. There's so much information online with regards to the basics of getting started.
Yeah,
to be honest, the big thing is always remember, get them talking about themselves, and the people love to talk about themselves, get them to talk about themselves, and just ask that very first question, tell me about you.
Yes.
And to be honest, you could be there half an hour. That's the only warning. You could be there for half an hour with people still talking about, the dog and the cat and whatever.
If you got me talking about my dog and cat, I would be here all day. So let's not go there. So do you have any other top tips? Obviously you said bring a buddy, that sort of thing. Do you have any others that you give to young people?
Just give it a go. Just give it a go. I mean, even if you don't even have to be picky for those first ones. If they're just testers to test the water, just give it a go and just see how you get on. You will learn all the time. Everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes now because as you get further into it and you've chosen which networks work for you, you'll then start to put a format in place. Right, I need to speak to X, Y, and Z. And you can even contact and go, do you know if X, Y, and Z are booked on? And the organizer will say yes or no. I mean, okay, there's always a chance that they won't turn up for whatever reason. But then you can actually, can you make an introduction for me? And you start utilising the networks how they need to be. But I would say when you initially start off, don't have pressure like that. Why put pressure on yourself? Just go there and enjoy it and just talk to people. And as I say, if you're lacking confidence, go with somebody who can then start those initial conversations, because there's nothing worse than when the conversation does come to a complete standstill and everyone's a little bit embarrassed and don't know what to say next. Whereas if you're with somebody who's quite experienced with it, or somebody who is going to know the people in the room, then go with them, because they'll make the introductions and they'll help you, and just say, do you know what, I'm a newbie, I've never done this before, or I've only done one or two, can you help me? Yeah, everybody loves it, yeah, come with me, I'll help you.
It's also quite nice if someone does approach you, you're like, oh, I'm an expert. So the other person will probably be very willing to help as well.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think anybody I know would say, oh gosh, no, don't come with me. No.
Exactly, and they've all been there once as well.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely.
My final question for you. What advice would you give your younger self? Not necessarily in relation to networking, could be anything at all. What would you have wished you'd have known when you were starting out in your career?
I think really I would go back to the networking side of things, because I didn't do it. And I think knowing now how important it is, I wish I'd done it a lot earlier. I think that's the only thing. So for anyone who's young who is thinking about starting networking, I'd say do it. Just get in there and do it, because the sooner you do it, the more contacts you're going to make. Utilise LinkedIn. I don't think it's ever too early to get yourself a LinkedIn profile, because it does take a number of years to establish and start posting things. And even if you just start commenting on what other people do and starting a conversation, that's a great way of networking. Yeah. If you see a really nice, they don't even have to be a contact of yours. If you see a feed, you think, oh gosh, that's great, then put a comment on it.
Yeah.
Even if it's something simple, like somebody's posted that they've moved career or changed, congratulations, that's absolutely great. You'll be, and it will start a conversation. Then all of a sudden, it's all about the algorithms, isn't it?
Yes.
The more you do on your platform, the higher you're going to come up on people's feeds.
Absolutely.
So again, networking doesn't have to be a face-to-face. It can be done on a social media platform. So I would say just start it as soon as you can.
Absolutely, and that is something at Cumbria Future Leaders we are passionate about. We've delivered a developing your personal brand session before a few times in the past, and that's all about how you utilise LinkedIn, and you can sort of sell yourself using this personal statement, this personal brand that you developed. We've got a closed LinkedIn group called Cumbria Future Leaders Network, and for people that are just starting out, it's a closed group. It's about 100 members, and it's obviously people that are all like-minded, really supportive. It's a great place for you to just, even if you're not sure about posting to your entire network on LinkedIn, just using these groups as well, by identifying people that you have things in common with, is a great place to start as well.